Hello again. Another month has passed, and now it's time to talk about all the books that I read in August. So, whoops, wrong page. I read 5. I read 5 books in August. I think it was a pretty successful reading month, generally. I'm getting kind of behind on hitting my goal of 71 books, but hopefully I will be able to catch up sometime later, just, later in the year. Still got time. Okay, so let's see. Why don't we talk about, I'm gonna talk about nonfiction first. So I listened to The Wager by David Grann. That was, well, like I said, nonfiction, and it's about this ship called The Wager, which crashed on an island, me trying to remember South American geography, off the coast of Patagonia, which is it's the western coast of South America, and they were pretty far south too, I think. I think it's Chile, and I am not going to look it up, even though I probably should, but I don't have my phone with me. Yeah, so I think that's off the coast of Chile. And this was back in, I'm bad at years, the early 1800s, I think. No, actually it must have been earlier than that, because one of the guys there was the grandfather of like the famous Lord Byron. So he was also a Lord Byron, just not the famous one, right? So it must have been in the 1700s, but yeah, so maybe it was the early to kind of mid 1700s maybe. Anyway. Wow, I'm really explaining this well, but anyway, whatever. So here's the idea. The British were like, we know that the Spanish send once a year a big galley full of gold from South America to, oh God, what's it called? Not Milan. What's their fucking island in the Pacific? It's so embarrassing. Manila. Let's like the same letters, okay? Give me a break. To Manila. And then, use that gold to buy a bunch of cool stuff like silks and spices and whatever. And then continue on to Spain and probably elsewhere in Europe to sell the stuff. So the British were like, what if we sent a bunch of boats and just like intercepted the galley not long after it has left left South America, capture it, and then we got a bunch of gold. So the Wager was one of the ships that was sent on this mission. My God, these guys just had the worst time. Everybody had typhus and was dying, and everyone had cholera and was dying, and then scurvy. I mean, that took a little longer, obviously, but eventually they had scurvy. And once they got down to the southern tip of South America, because of course back then there was no Panama Canal, there was just awful storms all the time. It was like a really bad time of year to do it, apparently. They thought like, oh, this will be a better time of year. I forget whether it was, I forget whether it was winter or summer, but they essentially picked the wrong one because there were just a lot of storms. I think maybe it was summer and they thought it'll be better because it's summer, but it was actually like, there was just a lot of storms and it was like really bad. So it took them like forever to get around to the tip of the continent, and the Wager itself was caught up in a storm and crashed, right? It crashed on some shitty little island. And then there, of course, was days and days and months of them being stuck on this island with scurvy, with nothing, barely anything to eat. I mean, they would go to the wreckage of the ship and they would get stuff from it. So that was like, it was fortunate that they were able to do that. Like they'd dive and get, I guess it must have not been very deep, but it was like in the, it was crashed. There was no way for them to fix it, but they did take wood from it as well and build a couple of small boats, so that they eventually did get off the island. So like obviously they did, or else who would have told the story? And then, you have actually several different groups because there's kind of a mutiny, and you have some of these guys coming to England eventually, It's not like they took the boat to England. They got to like Argentina or something. But anyway, they get to England eventually, and then like they tell their story of what happened. And then later the not the captain, but some of the guys who had been with the captain, because he died, they were, wait, no, did he die? No, the captain didn't die. Sorry. No, he survived. Yes. And they were able to, you know, and then they were like, no, actually this is what happened. And so it's just kind of a big, it's a bit of a mystery as to who's telling the truth about whether there was a mutiny. And at one point the captain supposedly executed one of the other like crew members, and everybody was kind of like mad about that. So it was interesting. I did not find it as interesting as I hoped I would, because I like a good ship story. Like, I like some ships, but I just kind of, I don't know, didn't find it as interesting as I feel like it should have been. I mean, everything I just said sounds interesting, but it just kind of weirdly was a little bit dull. But it was a decent book. The other nonfiction that I read in August was What If by Randall Munroe. So this is the guy who does XKCD, right? And apparently he used to work for NASA. He's like an engineer, used to be an engineer at NASA. Excuse me, a roboticist at NASA, which, hello. That's incredibly cool. And the idea behind this book is that he has a website where people will send him like strange questions, and this is like his, as he says, serious scientific answers to absurd hypothetical questions. There's a lot of math in here, and of course a lot of little drawings. There's a bunch of people getting hit by lightning. Isn't that fun? Something about what if a literal actual vacuum appeared in a half full glass of water, like if it was actually, you know, what if a glass of water was all of a sudden literally half empty? Let's assume there's life on the nearest habitable exoplanet and that they have technology comparable to ours. If they looked at our star right now, what would they see? That one's less silly. How high can a human throw something? How many Lego bricks would it take to build a bridge capable of carrying traffic from London to New York? Have that many Lego bricks been manufactured? Oh my God. Anyway, so it's a fun book, and I was given this by my cousin for Christmas a few years ago. So I finally got around to looking through it. I've been reading it early in the morning because I get up an hour early to take medicine and then I go back to sleep. But I've been like thinking about how that would be a good opportunity to read some just books that have, you know, very short segments in them, kind of like this one does. So instead of just looking at the internet for what will be the first of many, many times in the day, it's like, let's push that off and let's just like try and read something. So yeah, so that's what it took me. I think it took me about a month to get through. Yeah, a little less, but close to a month. So it was a really good choice. And I thought it was fun, and I would recommend it if you know, if you want what it's about. And it has a sequel, which I've just gotten out from the library. Okay, so that's the nonfiction of August. Now, okay, well, let's talk about World Without End by Ken Follett. World Without End is the sequel to The Pillars of the Earth, and it is like 1,000 pages long, a little over 1,000 pages long. So naturally it took me like 3 weeks to read. It was a wild time. And it really was. I enjoyed it though. So The Pillars of the Earth, which I read a couple of years ago, it's historical fiction, and it's about a town in England called Kingsbridge where they build a cathedral. I assume it's fictional. I don't fucking know. But they build a cathedral, and the rest of the series, I guess, is going to continue following the life of the people in the town, but like he keeps skipping hundreds of years. So the sequel, World Without End, that I just read, is set in the 1300s. So immediately I'm chanting Black Death, Black Death, Black Death. It did get there eventually, it just took a while. Yeah, it's just we follow a number of people who live in Kingsbridge and the surrounding area. And one of them grows up to become a carpenter and builder, and so he's doing some work on the cathedral sometimes, and they build like a hospital adjoining it because they, the cathedral now has nuns, and the nuns take care of sick people, and then they decide they need some more room to do that. It's a lot about, I mean, it's just about these individual people. Like, the guy is a builder. There's this woman who ends up becoming a nun, even though she's like not really very religious, but she does it so that she won't get like burned as a witch. And then it's dramatic. And then there's some other characters. I feel like several of the characters have very similar roles in the story and occupations and personalities even to characters from the first book. And so I'm like, is this going to be a pattern? Because that would at some point probably be kind of annoying. But I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I think the first book was better, but I don't know, that's just me. This one was like, I guess my main thing, right, is that the first book really has like a specific, you know, trajectory. It's like they're building this cathedral. That is the main goal. Every storyline has some relationship to it. But in this book, there's no like equivalent, because the cathedral's been built. Like, there's fixing, like things need to be fixed on it, and they build like, you know, some other buildings next to it, but there's nothing really equivalent to being like, we're gonna build this big ass cathedral and that's what everything is about. But it was still good. And I would like to read the third book a little sooner and not wait like a whole 2 years again, but we'll see, because it's probably absurdly long as well, and that'll probably scare me away. But speaking of series, I then read The Rosewater Redemption by Today Thompson, which is the final book in the Wormwood trilogy, which is pretty great. It's pretty great. There's aliens, there's other aliens. Sort of hard to explain, just because I feel like there's a lot of little things, and I don't know if I'm like great at, you know, condensing what it's about for everybody. But like in the Rosewater Redemption, can I remember? No, I really did enjoy it. I mean, we're following these characters. Basically a couple of crazy things happen in the end of the second book, and you know, in the third book they're dealing with that, and there's sort of this power play going on between sort of one of the alien leaders and like the mayor of Rosewater, and more just like just wild stuff. And I enjoyed it. Yeah, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm just bad at talking about this series specifically. I don't know why, but I liked it. I wish we'd spent more time learning about the aliens, kind of how they're integrating into society, and being a little vague. Because I felt we didn't really talk about that much at all. We really just focused on the idea that there were some of them that were like actively bad and doing bad stuff. And then I really did like how much time we spent with Bicycle Girl, I don't remember her actual name, and kind of like what her deal is, and that was interesting. And then ultimately they defeat the aliens. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I think it's a good series, even if I'm terrible at talking about it. And I'm finished with it now, so that's great. Good job, me. You should read The Rosewater Redemption. Yeah. Okay. The final book, yes, the final book of the month, Where Late the Sweet Bird Sang by Kate Wilhelm. This one is a classic sci-fi, and it was weird in the best way. So this one is about the world kind of ends, like basically animals, humans start losing the ability to reproduce, and there's some plagues and stuff, But there's this one family, this one kind of large extended family that's been preparing for this inevitability. And they have figured out cloning. Okay. They've figured out cloning, and they've gotten their hands on some land in like a valley, I think in Virginia. And they start making this kind of new society there. So the thing about the cloning though is after a certain point, you can't really make any more clones. Like they just won't survive. But fortunately, after a few generations, the ability to like normally reproduce starts coming back. So the guys who figure this out, who are starting this project, they have an idea for how it should go. But then of course the clones all grow up and have different ideas. And we follow a couple of different characters like through time. So it's not a huge amount of time that's passed, but like it's enough that you have kind of the first guy and then some, you know, and then some generations kind of. But it's interesting just to see like how the society develops and just kind of what it develops into with the clones, because they're in like groups. So they'll be like, I think it's 7 for the kind of middle section of the book. There's like 7 at a time. So they all have names that begin with the same letter, and it's like they'll have one baby and then they'll clone that baby. And then that's the group that goes together. So one of them is a little bit older. It's like wild. And then they have such a connection to each other. They can like feel each other's pain at a distance and stuff. Like it's very strange. And then they also start sending people out to explore beyond the valley and see like what they can maybe get from, I think, what city do they go to? They go to Washington, D.C. because that's the closest city, and they're trying to get like stuff from there. And they go further, and in the last section you're following this character who he's somewhat different. He doesn't have any clones, and he travels further and discovers that the world is essentially ending and like basically realizing that like the community in the valley like will not be able to survive, because as they go further on the cloning process, like they have been losing sort of creativity. They've been losing the ability to like think for themselves. It's interesting. And I realized that I really like a classic sci-fi that does a weird, like genetically engineered society, and I should read more of those, you know? So yeah, it was great. It was great. And I guess that's it. Yeah. So those were the 5 books. I think it was a generally successful reading month. And I hope to bring another one with September. I'm working on it. Oh, I want to show you this. So I've been doing something that's just absolutely going to take like a whole month, but I started it in August. And it is the tandem reread of the last 2 books of the A Song of Ice and Fire. So I got a guide from the internet and I wrote down all the little numbers of chapters and I stuck them in the right spots. And as you can see, I've been making my way through them. So yeah, it's hard. I'm gonna finish this book first, but the way they have it set up is I'm only gonna finish like 3 chapters before this one. I'll have like, you know, 3 chapters of this left when I'm done with this. So it's not really that exciting in terms of, you know, being able to say I'm done with it, but I'm having a great time. So anyway, that is probably most of what I'm going to talk about in September, because my God, these books are long. That's like 2,000 pages worth of stuff. So I will see you then, and we'll see if I manage to read anything else.